about Jocelyn Nungaray. She was found killed tragically 10 days ago in North Houston, and the community has been rallying together along with her family to celebrate her life in this tragic death. We do have a camera inside. Let's go in there live and give you a live look there inside, where we know there is a large support from the community there. I'm being told we have seen Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick there inside. I'm told Houston Mayor John Whitmire will be in attendance. Several lawmakers and city leaders will be in attendance to celebrate the life of this 12-year-old girl who was tragically taken from us 10 days ago. We know at this point that this case has ignited a debate across the country, has eyes on this case across the country. To bring you up to speed, if you have not been following this story, here's the latest information. We know that Jocelyn ran away from home about 10 days ago, and then unfortunately, later her body was found in a creek in North Houston off of Rankin Road. Two people who are accused of killing the 12-year-old are in custody at this point. Bringing up the names of those individuals, we do know at this point that Johan Jose Martinez Rangel and another suspect as well are both in custody at this point. We are still working to learn what led up to this. We have been following this story for quite some time, trying to get some more details about why this happened, what exactly happened, why this little girl was killed. Again, we are talking about a 12-year-old girl who was killed. We are told she was strangled by two men, and unfortunately her body was thrown in a creek. And that is the latest information that we have right now. Let's go live now inside to the funeral, where it is about to begin here at any moment now. We do have a reporter outside of the funeral. We'll bring you coverage later on this afternoon as well.
On behalf of the family, I want to thank you for being here. Your presence gave us a glimpse of the impact Jocelyn has made on so many lives and on so many people. I am asking you to do a little favor, please. If you'll make sure your phones are either on silent, do not disturb, airplane mode, or really get gutsy and just turn them off, that would be great. For this somber occasion, we have a number of elected officials who have joined us to show their support. And one of those leaders is our elected mayor of Houston, Mr. John Whitmire. I'm going to invite Mayor Whitmire to come and say a few words.
honestly, everyone that can hear my voice knows how personal this tragedy is for each one of us. Every Houstonian, everyone in our region. As a father and a grandfather, it's very personal. I know what's going through your mind when you learn of it, when you read about it. The thought of losing your child, your grandchild. Horrible circumstances. It gets no worse. And today, thank you for allowing me, for asking me to speak. It gives me an opportunity to speak for all Houstonians, for everyone in our region and across the state, and I think in fact our nation. We're sad, but we're also angry. 12-year-olds are not supposed to be taken off the streets of a great city like Houston and brutally strangled and murdered. We've done everything we can and will continue to support the family. Finances. She means we didn't have to worry about the cost of funeral arrangements. Thank you, Matthews, now. We set up a GoFundMe account with a $35,000 goal to pay for those costs. It's now at $80,000 and will be used by the family for necessities. Leslie has missed over 2 weeks of work. So Houston is doing what it does so well during a crisis. We come together. We're sad, but we're outraged and angry that this would happen in our community, or any community. God does not allow us to choose when we lose a loved one. But He does allow us to celebrate that life. Even that life that is short, is just. So today is a celebration of that young life. And I've been around the family the last 10 days. You can witness it yourself today. This child made a difference in everyone she met. Quite frankly, she's making an impact on all of us. A little bit of our lives was lost with Jocelyn, and we will never be the same when you read and hear about the horrific condition and circumstances of this murder. When you go to the Cadillac Vigil last Friday night, about 12 fellow students spoke. Her love of animals, her dancing, her musical instruments. This was a dynamic young person that was living the life of a 12-year-old with the challenges. Lexi, her mother, told me she was financing her braces at $240 a month. This is the face I want Houstonians to know about Jocelyn. $240 a month. And this mother was a teenage mother. Had Jocelyn at 15. They were the best of friends. They grew up together. That's what is so painful. But we're celebrating the impact she's had on each and every one of us. And it won't be lost. And there will be a commitment on all of our parts to recognize the happiness that she brought to her family, her friends. The diversity of her community was so visible last Friday night. Candlelight Vigil. People just wanting to speak. Huge extended family. 2 grandmothers, uncles, cousins. It was really something to behold, to see the coming together of the community in pain and anger. Before I close, I've got to emphasize the work that HPD did. Northside Crime Suppression Group, technology, homicide. These officers have children, and I could read it and see it in their eyes, in their effort. They weren't going to rest until they found the suspects at that time. I watched them on the streets of Kirkendall, going every direction, pulling retail, video. Went to a skate park, a Metro park and ride. They were desperate to find violent offenders that had killed this young lady and get them off the streets. Houstonians want to thank HPD. They did their job, and I've been around police my whole political career. I've been to scenes of accidents, shootings, other critical incidents. Nothing like the way they attacked this. And we need to thank them as Houstonians. They did their job with passion and determination like you've never seen before. In closing, where do we go from here? We support the family. We change laws. It's great that we see state officials like the lieutenant governor and the governor's wife, others, county officials, city officials. We need to do our job to make certain that the criminal justice system works and works for Jocelyn. Yes, we spoke out, and there was a high bond set. They shouldn't have a bond at all, and we will monitor that. And in closing, let me just let Lexi know, everyone know, the father know, each of you, Houstonians know, we're not going away. We're going to monitor this case all the way through the criminal justice system. We will monitor that bond. If by some circumstance this judge lowers it, or someone can make a $10 million bond, we will be there in court if necessary. So let me sit down by saying, we're all in this together. Lexi, Ms. Nungaray, we're not going away. You call us when you need something. Houston is your family now, permanently, across this nation, this state. Jocelyn has brought us together like before. And I promise you there's going to be changes nationwide, state, and local. She's demonstrated that we need to talk to our young people, our children, about how vulnerable they are when they're on the streets late at night. It's given us an opportunity to have that dialogue with our family members, our children. Yes, you're going to be a child, you're going to do foolish things, but it's dangerous. And yes, we're having a grown-up discussion. We're going to talk with our leadership about immigration. We're going to hold people responsible if they're not listening to us. We don't want to repeat this. So Jocelyn is making a difference and will make a difference in the entirety of our lives. Thank you, everyone, for listening, and let's go to work.
Jocelyn had a pretty eclectic taste in music. If you were here last night or came early, you heard some of it. But what amazed me in her taste in music is she happened to like this one song that was, goodness gracious, written in 1962. We're trying to figure out why she would like that song. But we thought it was just the title. Can you think of a better title than Come Out Me?
You're my Coney Island baby, supposed to be. You're my pretty little lady. I love you tenderly. You're my lucky star, that's what you are.
thought we should begin with this type of thought. Because 2 weeks ago, no one could imagine that we would be here. No one would believe that we could be here remembering the life of such an amazing lady. But due to events that we can't even, nor do we want to, begin to imagine, that's where we find ourselves. And when we find ourselves on days like today, in places like this, questions swirl in our minds and in our hearts. But let me be honest, today is not the day to ask questions of why. It's not the day to feel guilty. It's not the day to play the woulda, coulda, shoulda game. It's a day that we get together, to walk together, to embrace each other, and to remind us that none of us, when we walk through dark days, are ever alone. And it's also a day to acknowledge we just don't know why. Instead, it's a day to remember that we need one another, each of us. Lexi needs you, you need each other, and I need Lexi. I'm often asked what you should say to a grieving family at a funeral, and if I'm honest with you, I'm going to tell you, don't say anything at all. I mean, I want you to think about this. What are you going to say to Lexi today that's going to make any sense? What are you going to say to Gabby or to Jocelyn's grandmother or grandfather? What are you going to say? There are no words. What you did was better. Some of you came from great distances. Some of you took off work. You came here to be with them. And by doing that, you remind Lexi that she isn't walking this walk alone. What the mayor said is she's got the whole city to walk with her, to laugh with her, to cry with her, to embrace her. What you did was better than any words can ever say. But if you're one of those people who has to speak, just be honest and just say, you know how much death hurts, because that's the truth. Death hurts. One of the reasons why it hurts, because it kind of leaves us emptiness, right? From now on, every time the family gathers, there's an empty place where Jocelyn should be sitting. There's one less person waiting for the final season of Stranger Things, wondering how it's really going to end and what's going to happen to 11. But more importantly for Lexi, what's going to happen to her forever husband, Michael? I feel bad for Finn. He's never going to get to meet one of his biggest fans. But mostly there's just this emptiness right in our chest, right? It's like this hole in our heart. I would call it a Jocelyn-sized hole. Lexi, I wish I could tell you right now that the pain you're feeling is going to go away. None of us have lied to you yet. We're not starting today. There'll be days where it's going to feel a little less, right? And then what you're going to do, you're going to see a picture, you're going to hear a song. More likely, you're going to smell something, and all those memories are going to just come right back, and that ache that you're feeling is going to bubble back up. And while I can't tell you the pain's going to get away, I am going to tell you this. It's something I can't explain, but it's something I believe. Death may end a life, but it doesn't end a relationship. And the love you have for your daughter and the love she has for you in ways that I don't understand, it carries on. And hopefully in the coming days and weeks and months, you find some comfort in that. But today, what you and I know, the whole thing just hurts. And we call it a celebration, right? Because we want to be politically correct, but none of us are celebrating. We're remembering. And I can't think of a better way to remember than to ask a couple people who love her and know her to come and speak. And one of them shocked me when she said she wanted to come speak. So I'm going to ask Gabby to come up. And Gabby, unfortunately, we don't have a stand that I feel safe for you to stand on. So you're going to have to come right over here. And I think Gabby's dad, Rob, is going to come stand with her. And what Gabby did was write what I think is the most beautiful tribute I've read.
got to live and see each other for 2 years, where we got to laugh, play, cry, and get on each other's nerves. So she was so funny and had the best catchphrases. She's a goofball. She loves animals. She was smart and has a good heart. Jocelyn gave me courage to be myself and speak up for myself. And for that, I will always be grateful to you. I love you, Jocelyn.
Julie, Thea, is going to come and say a few words.
Hello, everyone. I am Jocelyn's great aunt, but everybody knows me, and how she knew me was Thea. But how I knew her is not Jocelyn, it's by Jossie. Today, I have the honor and great privilege to share a few words about Jossie. I have such great memories of her. I've been so blessed to have had been there when she first came into this world, took her first breath. And I was with her the day before she took her last breath. And now she's forever taken from us. But my favorite memories was when she was a baby and a toddler. All you can ever, what my favorite was her always crawling in and out of my room. She was either in or she was out. Always there. I want to think it was for me, but I think it was for my son Gio's toys. It really wasn't for me. He had a lot of toys. But I will always remember her big, beautiful smile and beautiful, bright eyes. And she had such beautiful curly locks. And Josie was our chunky little thing. She had rolls for days, but always a happy baby. But those who did know her knew Josie was shy, quiet, soft-spoken, and reserved like her mom. Josie loved to read. Anytime we were at Walmart or any store, that girl would try to beeline for the book section all day, every day. And so we had to hold on to her so she didn't go. But that's what Josie loved to do. She loved to read Harry Potter and all the series, Stranger Things, Twilight. But every year my family and I have a family vacation. She rode up there with me and my son, up there to vacation, and then that Sunday morning, she rode back with me, June 16th. But Josie, I will always love you. And today is the last day I will get to physically see you and just touch you one more time. But until we meet again, Josie, and we will, but you're up in heaven with Lita, and I know she's loving on you and probably made you some good food, so, but I love you. I love everyone. Just thank y'all so much for being here. But I did want to say, one of her best cousins, my niece, is Kara, and those were two peas in a pod right there. Is this going to be forever different? When we have Christmas, because as soon as one or the other was there, they waited for the other one, and as soon as they were together, they were gone. I'm always gonna miss Chelsea. So thank y'all, everyone, for all of your support and everybody that has done everything. But first and foremost, I just wanted to say I love you, Chelsea, and we will see you again. I promise. And we will get them, and they will get what they deserve. Thank you.
Mimi, are you ready? I'm going to ask Rebecca to come, who is Mimi to Jocelyn.
I had the privilege of meeting Alexis and Jocelyn and Elias about 3 or 4 years ago. They instantly became part of our family. They lived with us for a couple of years, so I got to see Jocelyn grow up every day. I got to see her get ready for school. I got to see her roll out of her bedroom on her hoverboard, running into the wall. But I guess one of my favorite memories is she loved to bake. And she'd get in the kitchen with us and we'd make the biggest messes. But she'd always eat what she cooked. Maybe it was only one bite, but she was just, she was a beautiful soul. And she is very much missed. Thank you for everybody for being here and for supporting Alexis and the family. And I will always be her other Mimi, and she will always be my Jossie.
Jocelyn's story began 4,566 days ago when Lexi and Chris welcomed a beautiful baby girl into the world. Now, Lexi didn't know exactly what to name this girl, so she went to the library and checked out books on baby names. And she thumbed through it and she narrowed it down, looking for the perfect name that would fit her perfect baby. And she found one. And what she did without knowing it was set the course for the way Jocelyn would be. You see, she named her Jocelyn, which is a Hebrew name, which means happy and joyful. And it's a fairly common name these days, but our Jocelyn was anything but common. In fact, I happen to think she embodies what Dr. Seuss was talking about when he proclaimed, "Why fit in when you were born to stand out?" And Jocelyn surely stood out. Now, most of you probably know that she had a love for all things Harry Potter, a world of magic and a world of wonder. It was a world that sparked her curiosity as she followed the adventures of Harry and Ron and the bad boy, Draco. It was the magical hall of Hogwarts where Jocelyn found a place where bravery, friendship, and love were the greatest spells of all. And like Harry, Jocelyn had a heart full of courage and a spirit that shone brightly. She faced life challenges with resilience beyond her years, always finding a way to see the magic in the everyday, whether she was playing with friends, helping someone in need, or sharing that amazing laugh and contagious smile. Jocelyn embodied the values of loyalty, bravery, and unwavering belief in the goodness of others. I wish we had time to go around the room and tell stories, right? Can you imagine the stories we'd hear? Some of the stories would make us laugh, and some might bring a tear to our eye, but we would hear them. I love the stories Gabby would tell if she had more time to talk. But Gabby talks so much, we don't have that much time. She would tell stories of how they would make slime together, or of them just sitting watching sunsets, or how they would paint beautiful pictures together. I'm sure one or two of you would tell stories about her love of the world of fantasy, whether reading Harry Potter or Twilight or watching Stranger Things. And of course, we would hear about Michael, her forever future husband. And we would hear about Michael again and again and again. We would hear about how kind she was to others, especially that deep compassion for animals. And I imagine you might hear a story or two about a pigeon that she thought was a dove, who she wanted to adopt. Of course, her mean old mom said no, but she took the time and the love to nurse that pigeon, dove, back to health, because that's who she was. We would hear story after story after story. You know what? Every story would be different, because all you guys, you knew her in a different way. But here's what I'm willing to bet, that if you were to pay close attention, what you would find is you would find this common thread running through every story. Because really, at the end of the day, just about everything this kid did, she did because she loved you. She loved being with you. Her friends and her family, and Alexia, especially you. Okay, not everything. She wanted Michael to herself. She wasn't going to share that with any of them. But everything else was about you. Now, I don't want you leaving here thinking any of us thought she was perfect. She wasn't. Because what we all know is none of us are, right? I tell my boys all the time, now they just roll their eyes at me, that when you come into this world, there's no how-to for dummies book. You just do the best you can. And you hope that people who matter most know that they were loved and that they were loved unconditionally. And that's how she loved. She'd get mad at you. She'd storm out of the room at you. She may be stubborn as her mom sometimes with you. But you know what? You never had to doubt how much she loved you. If you were in Jocelyn's life, you were loved. So she might not have been perfect, but the love she had for her friends and her family, that was perfect because it was pure, it was simple, it was unconditional. Now most of us know that Jocelyn, well, she wasn't really going to church. You see, she did something better. She decided she would just live her life the best way she knew how, the way God would want her to live it. You see, somewhere I think her mom must have taught her you're supposed to love others more than you love yourself, right? You're supposed to do for others who can't do for themselves. She learned that from her family. And rather than a lot of church folk that I know that let it go one ear and out the other, Jocelyn just said, let me see how I can live my life that way. That's how she lived. That's how she loved. For 12 short years, Jocelyn lived on this earth. And maybe Professor Dumbledore's words best describe her life. Happiness can be found even in the darkest of times, if one only remembers to turn on the light. Well, Jocelyn was the light of our lives. And her memory and her love will continue to light up our hearts and light up our lives.
Things fall apart, and time breaks your heart. I wasn't there, but I know she was
a lady by the name of Elizabeth Kubler-Ross developed something that she called the stages of grief: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. Lexi, over the years, we've learned that you're going to grieve forever. You're not going to get over the loss of a loved one, but you will learn to live with it. You will heal and you'll rebuild yourself around the loss you have suffered, and you will live life again. But Lexi, you're never going to be the same. Nor should you be. Nor do you really want to be. Because on June 17th, Jocelyn made a transition from this life into the next. And as she opened her eyes to that new life, there she saw a place of peace and of grace and of mercy and of love. A place that is too beautiful for human words to describe. And when we look at it from this side, we tend to think this is the final chapter in her life. But what we know, it's not the end at all, for a new chapter has begun for Jossie. One that is without end. One that is eternal. One in which she is united with those who have gone before. And the promise is the day will come when we all will be together again. For that's our hope. You know, even knowing all of that, we still cry, we still feel sad. So here's an idea. Maybe the next time that sadness comes and the tears are overwhelming, maybe what we can all do is just take a deep breath and a step back and remember the words of that great philosopher, Winnie the Pooh, who said, "How lucky I am to have something that makes saying goodbye so hard." And so today, to our Jocelyn, our friend, our granddaughter, our niece, our sister, our daughter, we say, Godspeed, little one. Sweet dreams, little one. Our love will fly with you each night on angel wings. Godspeed. Amen. We have a special presentation for Lexi from Mrs. Abbott and Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick. Once again, in closing, thank you for being here. You'll never know the true impact of the love that you showed and what that does for Lexi and the family. Lexi has asked that I express on her behalf and the behalf of the entire family their sincere gratitude for Dignity Memorial and Earthman Rest Haven for generously providing the funeral service, the casket, and associated expenses at no cost to the family. And a special expression of appreciation is offered to Julissa Soto, our funeral director in charge, and Jessica, our general manager, and the entire staff at Rest Haven. Lexi would also like to thank Mattress Mac for his generosity in securing the associated costs for the cemetery property and the marker, as well as for hosting a public reception that you are invited to attend following our services today. It's also quite appropriate that on behalf of the family, we thank the Houston Police Department, the local, state, and national leaders who have communicated with the family, but mostly the outpouring of love from Houston and the surrounding area. Thank you for honoring Jocelyn and showing that her heart of love truly mattered. Now, the way we're going to do this is we're going to escort the family out and off to the side. And in the meantime, the funeral staff will direct you to go out the doors, just follow their lead, and line up so that when we bring Jossie out to load her onto the carriage to take her to her final resting place, you can witness that. However, the graveside services are private for family only, and the rest of you are invited to wait for the family at Gallery Furniture Store, where Mattress Mac has so generously opened his store and his heart and his staff to serve you. And so the dignitaries will leave. I believe they'll be escorted out. I will escort the family out, and our funeral director, Cassie, will take charge of that.
Check, check, check. Check, 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 check.
There.
Thank you, man.
Glad they had that musical break.
Are you heading now?
I'm just gonna wait till, because we're probably gonna be the last ones out of here. Are you going to gallery front, the furniture store?
No. I just want to go to the graves.
We got another crew over there. I'm gonna take mine too. I'm not rushing. Especially because there's like one way in, one way out.
All right, you were just watching the public celebration of life for 12-year-old Jocelyn Nungaray, who was sadly killed on June 16th. Her alleged killers are behind bars. A high bond is set. They're accused of strangling her, possibly sexually assaulting her before throwing her body in a creek where she was found. Today, the community and her family members are gathering, or just gathered rather, at Earthman Rest Haven Cemetery on the North Freeway to say their final goodbyes.
That's right, and the casket was brought to the funeral home, to the gravesite in a horse-drawn carriage, and we do know that dignitaries were expected to attend. We will have some video from that service. U.S. Senator Ted Cruz, Texas First Lady Cecilia Abbott, Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, Houston Mayor John Whitmire, Harris County Judge Lena Hidalgo, also the Houston Acting Police Chief Larry Satterwhite, and Harris County Sheriff Ed Gonzalez. Now, this right here is the live shot that we're seeing of the gravesite for this beautiful 12-year-old girl whose life really cut so short. And just covering this for as long as we have since the beginning, it's just been heartbreaking for everybody. And we heard from many people during the service. There were also a seat there saved for Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee. We do know that she's going through her cancer treatment and hasn't been well, but I'm not sure if she did attend, but we'll have that information a little bit later as we get some live reports in this digital broadcast a little bit later from our reporters who are out there. A great thing, Caroline, is the fact that these funerals are so expensive, and that is one of the big burdens for these families. And the wonderful Jim McInvale, Mattress Mac from Gallery Furniture, immediately said he was going to pay for those funeral services. And not only that, but also hold a celebration of her life. There were classmates that spoke about her as well. 12 years old. I can't even imagine, if you can think back what you were like at 12 years old. It's like you have your whole life ahead of you. I can't imagine what the family is going through. But her mother has continuously said in the many interviews that we've done with her, and when we've heard from her, the fact that she is just so incredibly appreciative of all the support, and that is really helping her cope with this unimaginable loss.
Yeah, and that celebration of life that Mattress Mac is hosting for the family begins at 3 o'clock today. And it's just, what a sad time. I do just want to mention that both of her alleged killers are both charged with capital murder and are being held on a $10 million bond. We've been following this entire horrific case, and you can actually watch the entire timeline on Fox Local. That's a free app that you can download for your smart TV. And it's just heartbreaking from the day this all happened all the way up until now, today, when we're seeing her laid to rest.
And you really have to just think we haven't gotten the results back from any type of sexual assault, but that is alleged that happened to her for 2 hours before she was killed, before she was strangled. And one thing that really stuck out to me was the fact that one of these monsters actually has a 2 and 5-year-old.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. And
So how do you...
both of those suspects are Venezuelan nationals and were placed under U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE holds. So even though there is a bond set at this point, they still wouldn't be able to be released because of that. So there's been so much conversation in the community. I mean, even on the national level, following the death of Jocelyn Nungaray, because of the circumstances that we're learning about now in the following days.
Definitely. And more about these 2 monsters, call it what it is. They were both, according to ICE, entered into the U.S. illegally and apprehended. This was near El Paso, and they were released on orders of recognizance with notices to appear in court, but neither man was detained for long. So this does, although we are in the time period of obviously celebrating her life, the longer conversation is not just honoring her and keeping her legacy alive, but also the bigger issue, which is the crisis at the border, which is being talked about so much. If we take a live look now at the gravesite shot, you can see that there's all these flowers there, and there's going to be a lot more people there. And she has brothers and sisters as well. It's just a sad day, and I think Mattress Mac turning it into a celebration of life is really going to help the family and uplift the community.
Yeah, it's so sad looking at that gravesite right now. What a beautiful memorial they have set up there where she'll be laid to rest. And it's been remarkable how much we've heard from her grieving mom during these tough days, and how she's talked about just how heartbreaking this is for her and her family. And, she was so young, and right now they're looking at the cause of death was by, strangling her. That's what they've ruled according to court documents, and she was tied up. And it's just, it's a sad, sad story that has really shaken up the whole community. And it's sad that it's like now we're here, we're laying her to rest, and it's an emotional day.
I can't imagine finding out that information about the 12-year-old and how she was killed. Now, just to give you a recap of what happened, 12-year-old was found. We first didn't even know who she was, so we reported as a 12-year-old who was found in a creek, and then we found out it was Jocelyn Nungaray. And this funeral, it's remarkable that it's not just family. There was a private ceremony for the family, but the public was invited, and you could just see so many people at the funeral. And we will have video of the funeral and also some details, like I said, from our reporters who are going to be there and are gathering information now. And we'll have live interviews for us a little bit later. And like you said, both the suspects are Venezuelan nationals placed under U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement. So if they were even able to post that bond, they would not be able to get out. They can't go anywhere because they are not allowed to. Because they're illegally here. According to court documents, the 2 suspects asked for directions after encountering her on Kirkendall Road. And court documents also allege that the men lured Jocelyn underneath that bridge where they kept her for 2 hours. She was tied up and her pants were taken off, and she was strangled. You look at her pictures, you look at all the love and support. One thing that her mom said, which also stood out to me, was the fact that she was dealing with some mental health issues. And during one of the interviews, she had said that, look at all these people here. You thought nobody cared about you. And then she looked up and she said, look at how many people care about you.
That was the soundbite that stuck with me as well. It just made me want to cry when we were on the anchor desk, because she must have been going through something for her mom to say that. Look at all these people that care about you. Everybody knows who you are now. And truly they do. This story is all over national news. National news is following this one closely because it's just it's so shocking.
It's such a gruesome crime too. And it's important to note that mental health is something that so many people deal with, so many kids deal with. And I'm sure she felt alone so many times just because she was dealing with her own, issues, not to undermine anything else. It's like, it's so normal to feel that way, right? And for a mother to say that, I wonder even if the mother is, I can't imagine, but for her to speak to us, for her to speak to the media, if that's also just a huge way of just coping with this. And I'll be honest, this story has just been so hard. I know it's been difficult for you too. And, we try to compartmentalize, and it's like so many times you can't.
I know. And one of the details too that I think was kind of shocking to learn was that one of those suspects was actually wearing a U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency ankle monitor at the time that he allegedly murdered Jocelyn Nungaray. And that's kind of when we had one of the big initial press conferences, and we heard from Houston's mayor, who was just calling on the justice system to not let these monsters out of jail because they pose such a huge risk to the community. And unfortunately, we've heard of other instances across the country lately that do involve this same type of scenario. And it is concerning, and it is, we rarely would see, we cover a lot of bad things, and you don't always see the mayor come out. And we talked to Lena Hidalgo as well. She's speaking out on it. So it really has just rocked the whole community.
It's like, how can you not speak on it? I know District Attorney for Harris County, Kim Ogg, has obviously been very vocal. And one thing that she's said, which has made headlines, is there's a broken system at the border for letting in migrants suspected of killing in Jocelyn Nungaray. And she said they should have never been released when they crossed over into El Paso. And she also said, but we have a broken system, and Jocelyn's death resulted, and it's just hard when something could have been prevented, like a child's death. That's just one of the quotes that she said. And I know tonight, and not trying to politicize this or anything, tonight is the big presidential debate. Immigration is a huge issue.
Well, we already reported on one of the ads for Donald Trump from one of the conservative groups will be, I think, mentioning Jocelyn Nungaray.
Right. I was just going to say, whichever side, I think her name is going to stand up.
It'll be brought up for sure.
My point to bring that part up is to bring up how a child or a heinous crime like this is the catalyst for more conversation for something like this.
Well, we do have our reporter, Jonathan Mejia, standing by. Jonathan, what can you tell us at this hour? What's happening?
Yeah, so it's been a very emotional time for the Jocelyn Nungaray family. Earlier this week, 2 suspects were in court, and yesterday they had a private viewing for Jocelyn, and today it was the public funeral, which was opening to the public and the media. Now, I was inside, and we were able to just see and hear those who were sharing their thoughts and memories about Jocelyn and her life and the impact she has had on this community, not only here in Houston, but the entire nation. Mayor John Whitmire shared that the city of Houston is now behind the Nungaray family, that they are not alone. So it's been very emotional. Now, I want to talk about a couple points that was shared inside. So if you don't mind, I'm looking at my notes here. John Whitmire talked about how today was the second hardest thing he has had to do. The first was seeing Jocelyn's body the first day they saw her out there when her body was found. Now, the second was laying her to rest along her family. He talked about how difficult it's been for him, not only for him, but the entire police department. He wanted to emphasize that the Houston Police Department and the other divisions and agencies that helped out did a great job just going to business, looking at surveillance videos, going door knocking, and talked about the difficulties of working this case, because we're talking about a 12-year-old girl who was found dead, and the conditions that she was found in was very difficult. He says a lot of the people, investigators that work in this case, they are fathers. He is a father and grandfather himself, Mayor John Whitmire, just talking about the impact that has had on him and the division emotionally. Now, we didn't hear from Jocelyn's mother, Alexis. We didn't hear from the grandfather as well, who have been very vocal and open with the media, but we heard from Gabby, who was a cousin of Jocelyn. She talked about how they lived together for about 2 years and that they grew up to learn each other. She even talked about how they annoyed each other as young little girls, but she learned something big from Jocelyn, which was to speak up for herself and speak up for others who needed help. Now, we also heard about Jocelyn and how she just loved animals. They talked about how she tried to take in a pigeon because she thought it was a dove, and she tried to nurture it back to life, and she did, but she was upset that the family no longer let her keep the pigeon inside. We talked and learned about her interests. We know that she has an interest in Stranger Things. We know that she loves Harry Potter. She loves to read. She loves music. A very touching moment was when they played the song Coney Island Babe. We heard it, and it was very emotional. That was her favorite song, and we just heard it, and we heard, you know, her interest for the song and for the music. So we know that the funeral has served just a little over, and they're making their way over here to the grave site where we are standing here. But again, just very emotional for the family and for everyone involved. Caroline, Rashi. Sending it back to you, Caroline and Rashi.
Yeah, thanks, Jonathan. Just a really heartbreaking recap of what happened during the funeral. Now, Jonathan, he is standing at the gravesite where everyone is making their way, where they will lay Jocelyn Nungaray, just 12 years old, her life taken too soon by those accused, those two men who were allegedly in the country illegally and allegedly did this to her. They are now behind bars on a $10 million bond. They entered the country from Venezuela. One was wearing an ice monitor on his ankle at the time of this horrific crime. If you are just tuning in, we are following the final public viewing and the final public services for 12-year-old Jocelyn Nungaray, who was allegedly strangled to death by two men who entered this country illegally, who are now behind bars on a $10 million bond.
And some things that we heard from Jonathan, who was inside of that funeral service, he was talking about her friends or cousins, talking about how much fun they had, and one of the things also about how she wanted to take in a pigeon, thinking that it was a dove, wanting to just care for it, bring it back to life or safety or whatever the case may be. Just normal 12-year-old things. And so
she liked music.
Yes.
Did he mention Harry Potter?
I think so. Stranger Things.
Oh, Stranger Things.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
He also mentioned one of her cousins spoke.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't hear from the mom and the grandfather, but one of her cousins spoke and said that through Jocelyn, she learned how to speak up for herself, which is, it's just so sad to think about what she may have went through in her final 2 hours of life.
It's unfathomable. Definitely is. I do know that we have another reporter that is making its way on to a different part of, I believe, gallery furniture. I'm not sure.
Where that celebration of life will take place.
Yes.
That's at 3, right?
Yes, that's at 3. So people must be getting ready for that because it's about 40 minutes away. We do have the timeline of what happened to her from the start of us reporting all the way to today. And you can see that on Fox Local. And I believe we are also going to air that after we speak. So during this time, What was that? After gravesite services. Okay, so what are we going to go to now?
All right,
Okay.
Let's go back and take a live look at that cemetery as family and friends begin to arrive to lay Jocelyn Nungaray to rest, the 12-year-old whose life was taken on June 16th. She was lured by two men. She was likely sexually assaulted before she was strangled to death, and her body was thrown in a creek. Her public funeral was just held a couple minutes ago. It just wrapped up. Now everybody's going to go to this gravesite that you're looking at now. It's just so sweet. Just the hearts and the flowers. It's difficult to look at, understanding the circumstances of this case that we've been following since this all unfolded on June 16th. At the funeral just a couple of minutes ago, our reporter Jonathan Mejia told us that we heard from Mayor John Whitmire, who says that this is the most difficult thing that he's done since becoming the mayor of Houston. He went to the initial scene where he saw her body, and then today here at the funeral, you know, he has grandkids and kids, and for anyone, this is just all very difficult to take in. And those suspects are from Venezuela, in the country illegally. One was actually wearing an ice ankle monitor at the time when this happened on June 16th, late in the night. when they lured her. Apparently, according to the court documents, they like asked her for directions and then lured her and had her tied up for 2 hours, and then she was unfortunately found in the creek with no pants on. And this investigation and everything is all still underway, but those two men are now behind bars and they're being held with a $10 million bonds. And because of their ICE circumstances, they can't be released even if they met bond right now, is what we're understanding.
Yes.
But we have reporters on this, and we're covering this every step of the way.
I did want to make note before we do show the timeline that we had said that we were going to show at the end of the funeral services. We had Mattress Mac, who actually posted on X, formerly known as Twitter, saying, let's come together tomorrow, June 27th, which is today, from 3 to 6 at the Gallery Furniture North Freeway to celebrate Jocelyn Nungaray's life. Your support and contributions to the GoFundMe will help honor her memory and support her family during this challenging time. And there is a GoFundMe that has been set up in her honor, and the goal, Caroline, was $35,000. It's at $84,692. Wow. This was set up by Victoria. She says, my best friend Lexi and her family got some devastating news on June 17, 2024, of the loss of her beautiful daughter, Jocelyn Nungaray. We appreciate all the donations and are so grateful that you all helped us meet the goal, and with the support across the nation, we've decided to keep this GoFundMe up and running to help Jocelyn's mother and little brother have the opportunity to properly mourn in peace. Anything helps, and I ask for you to please give her and her family the time that they need to grieve. So this is from Victoria Galvan from Spring, Texas, and this is Jocelyn's mom's best friend who's put this together. And I wanted to just read some of the comments right now from the people who have donated, small, big amounts, whatever the case may be. Gretchen saying, this senseless tragedy should never have happened. My heart is broken for Jocelyn and her family. Rest in peace, sweet angel. We are going to make sure you get the justice you deserve. Our family's heart is aching, says Carrie Welsh, of your family and Jocelyn. No, we are thinking of you and hope this helps you take the time you need. We are so very, very sorry. We hope change to make things safer for young women can take place in Jocelyn's name. And that's really the gist of most of these comments that we are seeing here. I had the honor of teaching Jocelyn this past year. Joshua Gilman, a former teacher, saying she was extremely intelligent and always willing to help her classmates. I am profoundly sorry this happened to your family. And that's literally what we are hearing and what we are seeing as well. And
it's just, even just reading her obituary here gives you sheds a little bit more light on who this little girl was. She loved the color green. She loved whimsical fantasy things, Harry Potter, Twilight. She was loyal, compassionate, and a caring friend. She was always ready to share the joys in their lives and support them through their struggles. Jocelyn's tender heart extended to all living beings, as she never understood why there were so many stray animals. And as our reporter Jonathan mentioned, like, she wanted to take in a pigeon because she thought it was a dove. And it just, what a sweet, just young, innocent little girl. And it's all summed up here in her obituary, which is just so sad to read. But we do want to share with you this timeline of all the events and all of our coverage that has unfolded. It is difficult to watch, but it will allow you to understand exactly what happened here and what we know based off of these court documents and investigators. So with that, I'll leave you with it.
June 17th, a young woman's body is found in a North Houston creek by a woman just passing by, and that discovery has ignited a firestorm. We now know the body was that of 12-year-old Jocelyn Nungaray, and the two men accused of killing her crossed the border illegally just days before she was murdered. But this story starts with the manhunt.
I've spoken to her mother. She's devastated, actually holding out hope that it's not her daughter, which I'll let the lieutenant address the circumstances. I will say it makes me angry that we have dangerous criminals on the streets of Houston. Too often we rearrest repeat violent offenders, but we won't rest. And this is an example of why public safety will continue to be our highest priority.
We believe somebody did this horrible thing to her, and we are here to ask for your help to find out if anybody knows anything, anybody saw anything, and anybody can share that information so we can figure out what happened to her exactly, and we can find whoever did this and get them off the street.
Reporter Jonathan Mejia spoke with a woman who found Jocelyn's body, while our Randy Wallace spoke with her grieving mother.
Horrifying. It was scary. Being from a small town and then nothing like this ever happens, finding that, it scared me, being a mother and a grandmother.
Houston police are investigating the death of a 12-year-old girl whose body was found near West Rankin Road, just west of the North Freeway, not too far from where she lived.
How can somebody do this? How can somebody leave someone laying there? It's not something you expect to see anywhere.
Listening to the radio while driving her husband to work is a part of Jackson's routine, but Monday morning it changed forever.
He said, okay, it's time to call in, 6:15, and I just instantly lost it.
She says that's the moment she saw the body. Investigators tell us the girl left her home without her parents knowing.
Mother last saw her daughter at 10 o'clock when she put everybody to bed. Sometime between 10 and 12, she left.
Authorities say the girl was on the phone with her 13-year-old boyfriend, who last spoke with her around midnight when she was at a convenience store, and the boyfriend heard her talking to two men. Sources tell Fox 26 they saw the girl at the convenience store, and later, two men walked in.
There are violent offenders on our street that we must do something about it. Public safety has to continue to be I'll include everyone, our highest priority.
Jackson wonders how many people drove past the visible body. She says people should always speak up if they see something and would like people to be respectful to the victim's family.
If you see something, give people some closure. Just be respectful and give closure to somebody, because everybody deserves it.
She was an amazing little girl. Amazing. I was so excited to see the woman she was going to turn into.
But Jocelyn Nungaray will forever be 12 years old.
She's gone through a lot these past couple months, struggling with mental health, wanting to take her own life, her being saved. I always knew God had other plans for her. She's meant to be here. She's supposed to be here.
Police believe Jocelyn snuck out of her apartment between 10 and midnight Monday night. Her boyfriend reportedly told police he talked to her on the phone around midnight, and she was talking to a couple of men in a car at this gas station in the 12,400 block of Kirkendall. Alexis Nungaray says she didn't know Jocelyn was gone until Tuesday morning.
I looked everywhere, walked around, nothing, and I ran, got my car to where her phone pinged, which was right behind the skate park, and there was already cross tape and cops.
Jocelyn's body was found in a shallow creek in the 400 block of West Rankin. She had been strangled.
My baby didn't deserve this at all.
Police released these photos of two men seen at the gas station when Jocelyn was there. They are being called persons of interest. Jocelyn's mom says she doesn't recognize them.
They look like individuals that could come out of the apartment complex I live in. It's very Latin-based, and they could have came from the skate park. There's a lot of crazy people out here, and just by looking at them, you never really could know.
just so heartbreaking. Well, the very next morning, after pictures of the two men seen on surveillance video with Jocelyn were released, police made their arrests.
Hearing that the gentlemen that were in these surveillance videos, that they have been found and they've been caught and they've been taken in for questioning, it was like it was the greatest news to hear this morning, to be woken up with.
The last few days have been surreal for Alexis Nungaray and her family. Her 12-year-old daughter, Jocelyn, was strangled and her body left in a creek.
It's just like, still just doesn't register. Just, I can't believe it's her. And, you know, it'll take some sinking in.
In a multi-division operation led by Houston police, 21-year-old Johan Jose Rangel Martinez and 26-year-old Franklin Jose Peña Ramos, both Venezuelan natives, are now charged with capital murder.
Charges have been filed. Now we want the justice system to do its job. If there was ever a circumstance where you do not give someone bail, this is it.
Investigators did not go into specifics on how the suspects and Jocelyn met or how Jocelyn died, only offering that those details are still being investigated, but they have submitted for a sexual assault kit to be completed.
Suspects seen meeting the victim and talking for a few minutes while they were on Kirkendall. Later, the suspects and the victim walked together to a convenience store. After a few minutes, all three together walked to a bridge where ultimately Jocelyn was murdered.
Police say the men have been cooperative, and so has the family of Jocelyn's 13-year-old boyfriend, who was the last to speak to her on the phone. Alexis says if she could have that night back, she would have hugged her daughter and never let go.
I would have stayed up with her. I would have just lacked sleep. I would have gave her the biggest hug. And I just probably wouldn't have let go.
The suspects are now facing charges of capital murder, one being Johan Jose Rangel Martinez, the second male being Franklin Jose Peña Ramos.
Photos show homicide detectives arresting Martinez and Peña Ramos at the Canfield Lake Apartments on Rush Creek Drive, 3 days after 12-year-old Jocelyn Nungaray's body was found in a creek at West Rankin Road in North Houston.
The first guy jumped through here behind the house and they chased him. They caught him here just outside at the other corner.
A neighbor saw the arrest and says he's seen the suspects with a young girl before.
She was a young 12-year-old girl who was always around here with a white dog. The guy was from Venezuela. He lived just on the other side.
He's talking about Peña Ramos. This New York Post article says Department of Homeland Security sources say that he crossed into El Paso illegally on May 28th, but was released with a GPS ankle monitor. It's unknown if that monitor was on when Jocelyn was murdered.
We shouldn't be burying our kids. This shouldn't be happening.
Houston police released the booking photos of 22-year-old Johan Jose Martinez Rangel and 26-year-old Franklin Jose Peña Ramos. Both men are booked at the Harris County Jail being charged with capital murder, and we have confirmed that both men are from Venezuela and are undocumented. According to court documents, both suspects lured 12-year-old Jocelyn under the bridge, where they had her for 2 hours. They took her pants off, tied her up, and killed her, then threw her body into the creek. According to an ICE spokesperson, Martinez illegally entered the United States at the El Paso border sector on March 14th of this year. He was released the same day with a notice to appear, or an NTA, to appear before an immigration judge in federal court. Such is the case for Peña Ramos, who entered the country illegally on May 28th at the El Paso border sector. He was also released the same day with an NTA.
The death of 12-year-old Jocelyn Nungaray has sparked the debate across the country about the immigration law and policy at the southern border. Here's Jonathan Mejia and the Fox 26 Face-Off team with that part of the story.
The death of 12-year-old Jocelyn Nungaray has caught the attention of many across the country. Houston police has arrested 22-year-old Johan Martinez and 26-year-old Franklin Peña. Both are from Venezuela and are illegal immigrants. Now they're facing a charge of capital murder. According to ICE, Martinez was apprehended by Border Patrol agents in El Paso on March 14th and was released the same day. For Peña, he was apprehended and released by agents in El Paso on May 28th.
These individuals had been apprehended and then released. That's a broken system, and it leads to tragedies when you have a criminal element.
Take the necessary steps to secure our border.
Many are calling on President Biden to do more when it comes to changing laws at the border, but only Congress can make immigration reform a reality.
We should insist that Congress and administration come up with a fail-proof immigration system.
Depending if the person enters lawfully.
Alexis Lucero is an immigration attorney from El Paso. He explains that the Department of Homeland Security has two different approaches at the border. One for those that enter legally through the CBP-1 app.
Those persons will generally not be subject to a detention process. That means if that person does not have any immigration background, meaning immigration violations or a criminal history, those people who claim fear will be given an opportunity to present those claims to an immigration judge later in the process, and they're provided a humanitarian permit to enter the United States without detention.
And for those that enter illegally through the Rio Grande or desert, they have the heaviest consequences and are generally detained and face immediate deportation, unless they're able to pass a credible fear interview. But the United States cannot send some nationals back to their country or Mexico.
If immigration authorities detain people on the border, in the desert or in the river, that happen to be from countries where the United States has a strained diplomatic relation or has no diplomatic relation, we can't return them to their country of origin, so immigration is stuck with them. In those circumstances, immigration decides to let those people out on what's called a order of recognizance or an OR order, and they're given a notice to appear, which actually initiates a removal process with a judge.
As for what Jocelyn's mother hopes happens to the two suspects,
that they receive worse than what my daughter did, because she deserves to live and breathe every single day. I was looking forward to seeing how beautiful she was going to grow up to be.
Quanell, America is all familiar with the heartbreaking and horrifying story of Jocelyn Nungaray, the 12-year-old child that a Houstonian walked to a convenience store later in the night, snuck out of the house, to talking on the phone with an age-appropriate boy, and she is kidnapped, raped, and murdered by two Venezuelan immigrants that both entered this country illegally, were detained. I know at least one was given an ankle monitor that he cut off. I think both of them were, and then fled into these United States and committed this horrifying crime. Where we've heard stories about an Ecuadorian on the run for murder coming here in this country, commit more murder. We had a little girl in Edna, Texas get murdered, 16-year-old. And of course, the mainstream media is not getting a lot of focus or attention to the fact that we have been awash in crimes committed by illegal immigrants. In yesteryear, immigrants were far more well-behaved in this country because they knew if they screwed up, they would get deported. Now, 2024, woke liberalism, but not even liberalism, I consider myself pretty liberal, far left evil progressivism is saying, oh, sanctuary everything. Oh no, if you commit crimes, well, we've got to worry about other things and other people and feelings. If you come to this country, I don't care if you come illegally or legally, and you commit a crime, it's time to send your butt back to whence you came from, and that needs to start right now.
Charles, let me first start by saying that these two sick animals that did this to this beautiful young angel, this 12-year-old beautiful young girl, should be put to death, and soon. We shouldn't take 10 years executing these two men. But what I don't want to see happen is lies be spread about the broader immigrant community because of the sick behavior of these two individuals. We're now going to take a broad brush and paint all immigrants in that same vine. That's wrong. What we don't want to do is tell lies that immigrants are committing crimes like they never did before. The majority community of immigrants, yes, they're here illegally, and they should have came the right way, and maybe they should be deported, but the overwhelming majority of them are law-abiding citizens because they don't want to be deported. So to take the behavior of these two and paint the whole immigrant community is wrong. Those two men who did this to Jocelyn should be put to death, but white folks did the same thing to black people. They would highlight the crimes of one black man or two black men here and paint us with that same broad brush like we were all criminals.
Quanell, you sound like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. I didn't say all immigrants. I said, in fact,
that's what
immigrants
you're trying to
used
say.
to be.
You paint
No,
that brush.
I didn't try to say
You paint
anything.
that brush.
I used the words I used.
No.
And my words
You
are,
use the
if
dog
you
whistle.
come here,
You use
no,
dog whistle
if you
words.
come here and commit a crime, you should get sent out.
I
I didn't
agree
say
with that.
anything about the
I agree
law
with that.
abiding.
But
And this
you
is
have
your
more
race-baiting
Americans raping
nonsense.
kids. You got more Americans raping kids than
I know you did.
immigrants.
I know,
You got more
Charles,
Americans
you didn't
kidnapping
say
and
this,
killing kids
but I'm
than
going to call
immigrants.
you a racist.
No, Charles, you got more Americans
Oh,
committing these same
whatever.
crimes than immigrants.
Well, as that debate raged on, the community showed up to support Jocelyn's family with a vigil, many wearing the slain young woman's favorite colors.
I'm just very blessed and thankful for everyone to be here. It's very hard to be here.
In the midst of tears, surrounded by family, and holding on to 12-year-old Jocelyn Nungaray's memory, Jocelyn's mother is shocked by the overwhelming support for her daughter.
You said no one cared about you. Look at the people that are here. They care about you.
Houston Mayor John Whitmire, the Houston Fire Department, and members of the police department were among the friends, family, and community tonight.
When you have such an innocent child that loses her life so horribly in this situation, this is an all-in for us. Everything we've got.
The crowd was full of black, maroon, and forest green, as those were Jocelyn's favorite colors. She's remembered as a girl that loved to read and play the cello, things that 12-year-old girls are into, and now she will be that forever.
Forever 12. She'll never be a teenager, so she'll forever be 12.
Jocelyn's death has caught the eyes of the nation, and tonight the family was reminded of the importance of her life.
It's amazing. One thing that I've told my daughter to keep in mind that, you know, everything that we see here is to show that Josie probably did not realize how much impact she had on all of us.
Well, as the past 10 days have progressed, we've seen Jocelyn's accused killers in court for bond and detention hearings, the family expressing their outrage at each. Reporters Jade Fleury and Jonathan Mejia have those stories.
She was just innocent. It shouldn't have happened.
26-year-old Franklin Pena facing a judge Monday morning on capital murder charges for the death of 12-year-old Jocelyn Nungaray. Pena is one of 2 illegal immigrants charged with strangling the teen and throwing her body in a creek.
I hear her sayings just replaying over and over on in a loop in my brain.
The courtroom was filled with Jocelyn's family members watching as the judge placed Pena's bond at $10 million, $5 million more than the district attorney's office was asking for. The bond set high to ensure the suspect appears in court.
Additionally, he was talking to his boss, who works in construction, and asking for money because of what they did to get out of town.
Officials say Pena's current charge doesn't carry the death penalty.
As soon as our lab results are back, and if they support a death penalty eligible type of capital murder, then we'll come back and ask for no bond.
Jocelyn's family just demanding justice for their little girl.
She had such a bright future ahead of her, and I knew she was going to go very far. And, you know, these monsters took that opportunity from her.
Johan Jose Martinez Rangel was in court Tuesday morning. His bail was set at $10 million, despite his lawyers making a case to have it reduced to $500,000 and making it known he has 2 children, ages 2 and 5. Although both suspects were given a bond, they would not be free if they posted it because Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE, has put detainers on them with no bond. Megan Long, the lead prosecutor, shared with the judge how Martinez told police he was the one who tied up Jocelyn and suggested Pena throw her body in the bayou to hide DNA.
It's especially difficult when you're dealing with the loss of a 12-year-old child who had their whole life ahead of them. So this will be a very emotional case for us as prosecutors as well as the family.
The prosecutor says Pena also admitted to kissing Jocelyn, but said it was Martinez who did everything else. A sexual assault kit was performed on her body, but results are still pending.
We would present any facts and evidence that we have towards that to a grand jury for them to possibly indict this under a different type of capital murder for possible underlying sexual assaults.
Authorities have Martinez's cell phone, where they say they found evidence of him looking up for ways to flee the country. Long says this will be an emotional case for both her team and Jocelyn's family.
It's always very emotional for us as prosecutors because with every family you meet, you see your mother, your aunt, your cousin in every case. And so it's always very difficult.
In the coming days, young Jocelyn will be laid to rest, her funeral paid for by Houston philanthropist Jim Mattress Mac McInvale. While that might give her family some closure, the microscope will remain on this case for some time on a national scale as an example of our continuing crisis on the border.
Rashi, that was a great recap of what all happened here since June 16th when 12-year-old Jocelyn Nungaray was found dead in a creek, strangled, tied up, and those two men who were in the country illegally from Venezuela are now behind bars. Now you're looking at live images from the burial site where you can see friends and family pouring in to once again remember the life that was cut too short. We've been showing you live images from here for the last hour or so, and now people are arriving to do the final burial, say the final goodbye. Following this, everyone will be heading to Gallery Furniture, where Jim McInvale, Mattress Mac, will be hosting another celebration of life for 12-year-old Jocelyn Nungaray. This really is a story that has gotten the entire community involved. At the funeral that we were bringing you about 45 minutes ago or so, we heard from Mayor John Whitmire, we heard from Jocelyn Nungaray's family, and just how much this little girl is going to be missed. We've heard in the following days after this horrific crime was committed, just how her family was wondering how her life would have turned out, and just everything that she had ahead of her now is gone. So we will be continuing to follow this story, and we will be back as soon as the celebration of life at Gallery Furniture gets underway. We will have a camera in there, reporters, and we'll bring you the latest from there.
We'll see you then.
All right, everyone, we are back here for you on Live Now from Fox in Atlanta right now. President Biden speaking to some supporters ahead of the presidential debate. Let's just listen to the sights and sounds right now.
Watch your step.
go. A lot of Secret Service around the president as he is trying to greet every supporter there in the Atlanta area. Just hours to go before this presidential debate. Now we do want to show you, we do have the site here of Trump Force One, if you will. This is the former President Donald Trump's plane, and now about to be wheels up, heading to Atlanta as well. So we've been really showing you the departures and soon to be landings of all the candidates right here as well on Live Now from Fox. But now you see the former President Donald Trump there now heading to Atlanta for the big debate that will be happening tonight. And of course, we will have it for you, the CNN presidential debate simulcast right here on Live Now starting at 9 p.m. Eastern. And of course, we'll have analysis and insight right after that only you can expect right here, as always, on Live Now. We are going to take our final break of the hour. Stay right here with us. More to come in just moments. Welcome back, everyone. It's you Live Now from Fox. I'm your host, Mike Page. Do wanted to show you another look here of Donald Trump about to take off, heading to Atlanta for the presidential debate. We did see President Biden just moments ago landing in Cobb County, and then just moments ago as well, talking to supporters and shaking their hands here. But now we will have Donald Trump just here as wheels will be up, and he will be heading to the debate. So all afternoon long, going into the evening, we will continue to bring you the coverage and get you ready for the debate as we will be featuring once again the presidential contenders for 2024, the first time that they will be seeing each other in this election cycle. And we'll be having the coverage for you tonight, 9 p.m. Eastern, the simulcast of the CNN presidential debate and all the coverage that goes along with it, getting you all set up for this evening. Our colleagues will continue to bring you the insight as well as all of the different analysts that will be coming on to talk about the big debate. Well, that's going to do it for my time here on the desk. My colleague, Andy Mack, is going to be with you for the next couple of hours, breaking down the biggest top stories and getting you ready for the debate as well. Do want to take you out to House Democrats from earlier today coming together to talk about abortion rights in America.
Representative Diana DeGette and Representative Barbara Lee are extraordinary co-chairs of the Pro-Choice Caucus for their leadership and for gathering us here today, united as House Democrats in full, complete, and unequivocal support for reproductive freedom. Let me also thank Representative Judy Chu, Representative Kathy Manning, and Representative Susan Wild for their extraordinary leadership. 2 years ago, the far-right extreme Supreme Court majority overturned Roe v. Wade and detonated reproductive freedom for millions of American women. The catastrophic decision in Dobbs was just one part of the extreme MAGA Republican plan to impose a nationwide abortion ban, outlaw contraception, and limit access to IVF. Today, reproductive freedom is under assault throughout America. House Democrats unequivocally believe in a woman's freedom to make her own reproductive health care decisions, period, full stop. It's a decision that should be between a woman, her family, her faith, and her doctors. The far-right's extreme effort to take away reproductive freedom is unacceptable, unconscionable, and un-American. We must stop them, and together we will stop them. House Democrats, House Democrats will continue to fight for nationwide access to abortion care. House Democrats will continue to fight for access to contraception. House Democrats will continue to fight for access to IVF. We will continue to stand up. We will continue to show up. We will continue to speak up. We will pass the Women's Health Protection Act. We will pass the Right to Contraception Act. We will pass IVF protection legislation. We will not rest until reproductive freedom is the law of the land for every single woman in the United States of America. It is now my honor to yield to a tremendous champion for reproductive freedom, our extraordinary whip, the Honorable Catherine Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Leader. I am so proud to stand with this caucus as we mark this critical anniversary of taking away, rolling back 50 years of a constitutional right under Trump's Supreme Court. What has happened? In the last 2 years, 27 million American women now live under health care bans. Doctors are being criminalized. IVF and contraception are under attack. And what does this mean? Let me share you a story from my second pregnancy, where a routine ultrasound showed that there was no longer a fetal heartbeat. And when I needed abortion care, because there wasn't a full miscarriage, to prevent infection, to preserve future fertility, I got that care without question. Fast forward to a post-Dobbs, a post-Roe v. Wade Texas. Amanda Zarowski water broke at 18 weeks pregnant. Her pregnancy could not survive. Yet her doctor, because of criminal penalties, could not give the care she recommended. She was told to go home, wait for infection to set in, and it did. She had a sepsis infection, spent days in the ICU, barely survived, and today does not know if she will ever be able to become pregnant again. What is the difference in the outcome of our two stories of miscarriage? It is Donald Trump and the GOP who has dismantled women's health care and reproductive freedom in this country. We are at a crossroads. We are going to choose freedom or we are going to choose extremism. And every single time this has come before Americans for a vote, they have chosen freedom. That is in Kansas, Michigan, Ohio, Tennessee, Kentucky. Every single time, Americans stand with freedom. And this caucus and this president stand with them. And I am so pleased to introduce a champion for reproductive freedom, a champion for returning these critical decisions to American women and American families where they belong, co-chair of our pro-choice caucus, Barbara Lee.
Well, good morning, everyone. Let me first thank Leader Jeffries, Whip Clark, Chair Aguilar, our co-chair of the pro-choice caucus, Diana DeGette, for their bold leadership. I am a proud Democrat, and I'm so proud of our Democratic caucus. Thank you all very much for staying the course on this issue that really is about life or death. As co-chair of the pro-choice caucus with Congresswoman DeGette, I'm proud to be in this fight with all of you and with all of our incredible, inspiring coalition partners doing the work on the ground. 2 years ago, 5 extremist Supreme Court justices voted to take our country back decades and revoke a fundamental right of millions by overturning Roe. This is yet another attack on our democracy. Now, millions of Americans of reproductive age are living without access to abortion care, suffering preventable harm to their bodies and their lives. This anniversary, it's a stark reminder of the casualties in the GOP's war on reproductive freedom. But it also must be a call to action. It's a wake-up call, because this cannot continue. Tonight, the 2 candidates for president will debate for the first time in this election. I hope the country is paying attention not only to how they talk about abortion, but what they've actually done about it. From day one, the Biden administration has shown a clear and early commitment to sexual and reproductive health and rights. He has taken concrete actions to protect access to abortion, including medication abortion, the ability to travel for reproductive care, access to affordable quality contraception, safeguarding the privacy of patients and healthcare providers, and more. The extreme GOP and their allies on the Supreme Court could not be more opposite. They've continued an assault on reproductive freedom through harmful legislation at each level of government and in states across the nation. Let's be clear. Republicans are ready and eager to institute a national ban and create more suffering. We cannot let them do that. We cannot let GOP extremism continue to subvert the will of the people. As someone who had an unsafe and illegal abortion before Roe, we cannot allow this country to revert back to those days. The majority of Americans support the right to an abortion. Our caucus won't stop fighting until our laws reflect our democratic values and our own freedoms to make our own health care decisions without interference, mind you, from judges and elected officials. Thank you again. And now I'd like to yield to our woman warrior, Diana DeGette.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Barbara. Well, as you've heard, it was 2 years ago today when the Supreme Court, for the first time in our nation's history, took away a freedom that all Americans have. And the results were swift and they were devastating. 21 states have banned or severely restricted abortion, and those laws took effect the very next day after the Dobbs decision. In Ohio, a young girl who had been the victim of rape had to be taken across state lines to get the health care that she needed. In Texas, as you heard, a woman was sent home because the doctor was afraid of criminal prosecution, and she almost died from sepsis before she could get the health care that she needed. I just saw the reports this week of the birth rates and the infant mortality, which have gone up since the Dobbs decision, Imagine the cruelty and imagine the impact on countless Americans. 1 in 3 women and more than half of black women in this country live in states where they don't have access to abortions. And as states enact new and tighten existing restrictions, and as the impacts of these cruel laws grow, more and more Americans are being forced to leave their homes, to somehow take leave from their jobs and flee their states to get the care they need. And that's just the people who can afford to do that. Everybody else, too bad for them. In these draconian states, laws, they don't just affect states like Colorado or like Texas. They affect states like Colorado, my home state, where abortions have gone up by 3 times and where Coloradoans have to wait along with everybody else to get the health care they need. So what have the House Republicans done to alleviate this problem? They refused to take up the Women's Health Protection Act, but not only that, 187 members of the House Republican caucus have co-sponsored legislation that says that that personhood begins when the egg and the sperm meet, giving those fetuses the same rights from conception that all of us have today. What would that mean if that became law, that 187 of them have sponsored? It would mean that all abortions, no exceptions, from day one would be banned. It would mean that in vitro fertilization would be banned. It would mean that many common forms of birth control would be banned. And it would mean that life-saving stem cell research would be banned. I am not exaggerating. This is the agenda of the far right-wing extreme House majority. They don't really want to talk about it right now because they realized that the vast majority of Americans and the vast majority of their constituents oppose these extreme laws. But make no mistake, if they keep the House, if they take the Senate, and if Donald Trump wins the White House, this is exactly the far-right majority that will enact these laws. We simply cannot let this happen on behalf of the American people, and we will not let it happen. One of the first bills we will pass in Congress, when we take the majority and Hakeem Jeffries becomes the next speaker, is the Women's Health Protection Act. And we will restore freedom for all Americans to make their own health care decisions, including abortion, for everybody in every state in this country, because that's the way we do it in America.
All right, you're just listening in there to these remarks talking about this, the ramifications of November, but also the down ballot tickets there that will likely be impacted by what happens in November, and what happens in November impacted by what happens tonight with the first presidential debate. Joe Biden and Donald Trump on the stage meeting eye to eye for the first time since back in 2020. I'm Andy Mack here on Live Now from Fox. Kind of a live look there inside of this arena there on the campus of Georgia Tech in the heart of Atlanta, Georgia. We're going to be right back. All right, welcome back in here to Live Now from Fox. I'm Andy Mack. Thank you so much for joining us as we continue on. Well, patriotism abounds in Atlanta tonight. Of course, the first presidential debate at 9 o'clock Eastern. But prior to that, another event there at the heart of the city, the U.S. men's national team taking on Panama in Copa America. So a big night there for Atlanta. A live look inside of this arena on the campus of Georgia Tech, and just up the road at Mercedes-Benz Stadium, the U.S. in their group facing Panama, the second of such games. They faced Bolivia in a 2-0 victory several days ago. For more on this, let's go out to my conversation right now with Fox Sports writer Doug McIntyre from earlier. Back in here to Live Now from Fox, I am Andy Mack. The Copa America getting going in the group stages. The U.S. men's national team already has 3 points after defeating Bolivia in their opener. They take on Panama tonight in Atlanta in the second match. We're going to be joined right now by Fox Sports soccer reporter Doug McIntyre. Doug, thank you so much for joining us there from Atlanta. Of course, it was a good start to this group stage. We kind of expected it, a very solid win over Bolivia. What's the mindset for the U.S. men's national team coming into tonight?
I think it's more of the same. I mean, a decisive win, like you said, 2-0. There were goals left on the table potentially, some chances that the U.S. didn't convert. They could have padded their lead, which might come into play later in the tournament with goal difference. But a multiple goal win, a shutout win, hard to find too many faults with that, especially in a first game. We know how important it is to get 3 points in the first match of any tournament. So I would expect more of the same tonight against Panama. I don't think we'll see too many lineup changes. And the U.S. will expect to come away from this match with 2 wins from 2 games, and that should set them up really well for the big one, the group finale against Uruguay on Monday.
Yeah, that is very true, and it would set them up and kind of already advance them on, so it would just kind of not be the ultimate pressure-packed final match game as well. I do want to ask you, because we talked about it going into Brazil. We talked about it going into Bolivia. Christian Pulisic really stepping up. He's got a goal in the last 2 games, both very impressive goals against Brazil, and then most recently against Bolivia very early on. How maybe has he stepped into this role and really shined early on during Copa?
Well, I've covered Christian Pulisic since he was 17 years old, when he was anointed the next big thing in U.S. soccer because of his talent, his undeniable talent. It was obvious to everybody, but a lot of pressure to put on a kid that age. He doesn't have this sort of personality where he was going to embrace that. He's a shy, quiet guy. And it took him a long time to really feel comfortable in his own skin. So it's been fun to watch that evolution as a player. He's 25 now. He's been wearing the captain's armband in this tournament, and he's a different guy. He's still, not the most outgoing person with the media, even with his own teammates, but he leads by example. He's certainly done that in this tournament so far, and this is the best he's ever played. And certainly if the U.S. is going to continue to make a deep run in this tournament, Christian Pulisic's going to be the focal point. Like you said, he set the tone right away in that Bolivia game, scored a terrific goal less than 3 minutes in. That really took some of the pressure off the U.S. Even though they were expected to win that game, there is pressure with being a favorite, just like it will be the case tonight against Panama, with the Americans expected to win. So an early goal always helps. And right now, Christian Pulisic is carrying his team on his back.
Yeah, as good as he's ever been, but also potentially as healthy as he's ever been, which was a key to him in the kind of season overseas as well. I do want to ask you, because they played Bolivia in Jerry World at AT&T Stadium in Arlington, Texas. The atmosphere maybe not what they wanted. Tonight is going to be different in Atlanta, and also there's a presidential debate there happening in Atlanta. What's the buzz about the city right now heading into this game, and maybe how many people were we expecting there in the building tonight?
I think it's fair to say that people in Atlanta are more excited about this game than they are about the debate. There is a real buzz around the city for both events, but certainly for this match with the U.S. men tonight. It's been almost 10 years since the U.S. men's national team played in Atlanta. They've never played at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. It's a phenomenal venue. The U.S. women drew a record crowd of over 50,000 here just a few months ago, their largest crowd since the Women's World Cup. And Atlanta's become a soccer city over the last number of years, with Atlanta United leading the MLS in average, attendance by a considerable margin ever since they came into the league. And they're being rewarded, I think, for that by getting a really important Copa America game. Of course, they're going to get World Cup games in 2 years from now, but this is the biggest match we've seen in Atlanta in a long time. I expect the crowd to show out. The crowd in Dallas was actually pretty good in the end. Almost 50,000 there at Jerry World, a pro-U.S. crowd, and that's going to be taken to another level, I think, tonight. Organizers haven't released numbers in terms of how many tickets are sold. 71,000 people fit inside the building. I think we'll get close to that, and it's going to be a pro-USA crowd. The players talked this week about the vibe in the city, how everybody knows what's going on. I could tell you, Andy, when I got here yesterday, I got in an Uber from the airport, and my driver knew everything about you. He said, oh, you know, the Bolivia game was okay, but they could have scored more goals, and really looking forward to Panama. So this is a knowledgeable soccer city. It's been amazing to see. You know, we're in the deep South. You wouldn't expect it. I think 10 years ago, anyone would have thought that Atlanta would become, you know, arguably the most important soccer city in the country. It's become that. And they should see a great spectacle tonight. And I know the U.S. players are looking very, very much looking forward to playing here.
Yeah, it's kind of soccer town USA right now, like you mentioned with the MLS club and the fans showing out. I believe Argentina already had a Copa America game there with Messi, and the crowd was unbelievable for that. All right. My last question for you, Doug, is obviously Panama tonight. Uruguay is kind of the big one on Monday as well. What do they need to do tonight to really set themselves up for success throughout this group stage and then advance on to the round of 16?
And anything other than a win tonight, Andy's going to be a disappointment. The U.S. is expected to get the victory tonight, and they need to if they want to win the group, potentially avoid Brazil in the first knockout game in the quarterfinals. So it'll set them up well for that group stage finale. Uruguay won its first game against Panama, so the U.S. has to sort of hold serve. And then there's everything to play for in that last group game with the group title on the line, first place on the line. You get a better path to the final if you can finish first as opposed to second. And really for the U.S. team, it's the talk has been about improving the performance every game, and the results will follow. So I think U.S. fans will hope for a little bit more, better finishing in front. I think the U.S. team will be tested defensively more than they were in the Bolivia game, where the center backs and goalkeeper Matt Turner didn't have a whole lot to do. So I think they're looking for an improved performance in addition to the 3 points, so they can feel good about themselves going into that really important group stage finale against one of the tournament favorites, Uruguay. Yeah. So that's going to be a great match, but I can tell you the players are not looking ahead. They're not looking past Panama. They know it's a difficult opponent, an opponent that if they're not ready, has in the past shown an ability to upset them. They've beaten the U.S. at Gold Cups three times in recent years, 2011, and then eliminating the Americans in 2015. And again last year. That wasn't a full-strength U.S. squad like we'll see tonight, but I think if the U.S. comes out and plays well, they'll set themselves up really well for that group finale against Uruguay.
Yeah, no overlooking Panama tonight. They're in Atlanta as they're looking to kind of make a stride here in this group, also ahead of the World Cup in a couple years' time. All right, Doug, enjoy the game. I appreciate your time breaking it all down here on Live Now.
Thanks for having me, Andy.
All right, thank you again for that conversation. Coming up tonight, kind of a little bit of a preview, pre-game, 6 p.m. Eastern will be that. U.S. men's national team 90 minutes or so away. They take on Panama in Atlanta, and Atlanta kind of the center of all things. We're covering here on Live Now from Fox, the U.S. men's national team, and then right into the debate between Biden and Trump. I'm Andy Mack. We're back after this. All right, welcome back in here to Live and Now from Fox. I am Andy Mack. The stage is officially set for the first presidential debate of this election cycle as we count down the days until this November election. A couple Live Now looks there inside of the spin room, inside of some of these arenas there on the campus of Georgia Tech, and also outside. Kind of a gloomy day there, but we know that President Biden already on the ground in Georgia. He met with some supporters. We did see this image coming in just a little bit ago from the former President Donald Trump as he was aboard his plane departing there from Florida, heading up north to Georgia for this. And you quite imagine there's going to be quite a lot of people there for the arrival. No audience in place for the debate, but supporters will be there expressing their support outside of this debate likely. Let's take you out to our Fox 5 team. Brittany Edney gets you ready for Trump's arrival in Georgia ahead of this debate.
Behind-the-scenes look at our upcoming coverage of former President Donald Trump's arrival. You can see right now behind me, you have a lot of fans and supporters lining up. I want to give you a rundown of what exactly is going to go and happen once we go through security and have all of our gear swept by the Secret Service in that building right there. We'll be out on the tarmac on the other side of this building as his plane lands. We're also going to give you an up-close view of his arrival. We're told the former president should be touching down here at Hartsfield-Jackson at around 5:35 this evening. During his last visit, Mr. Trump took time to interact with supporters, even signing memorabilia and also taking pictures. Already those hoping to catch a glimpse are lining up. We chatted with one father-son duo who traveled about 5 hours from South Carolina to witness Mr. Trump's arrival.
I want my son to understand what it really means to be involved in government, to be involved in politics, to understand who the candidates are, follow them, and then make up his own decision, not let bureaucrats or administrators in schools make the suggestions for him.
During Trump's last stop in Atlanta, there wasn't a scheduled press conference, but once he deboarded, he ended up taking questions from the press. So we're going to have to wait and see if he's going to do something similar this time. At Hartsfield-Jackson, Brittany Edney, Fox 5 News.
All right, thank you so much for that. And it seems like about an hour until he arrives there on the tarmac in Georgia ahead of this 9 o'clock debate later on this evening. Of course, you can watch it right here, the CNN presidential debate simulcast on Live Now from Fox tonight at 9 o'clock Eastern. We'll have that full coverage here for you as well. I'm Andy Mack. We're back after this. All right, welcome back in here to Live and Now from Fox. I'm Andy Mack. Thank you so much for joining us. Just about 4:30 on the East Coast as we gear up for the debate. But we also want to take you out to a somber event, this one taking in the Houston, Texas area as they celebrate the life of 12-year-old Jocelyn Nungaray. I want to put up just some of this, a funeral being held there, and the media kind of at a distance, but they continue to honor this, the life of her on this, the 12-year-old girl that was tragically killed. 2 suspects charged there with capital murder, held on a $10 million bond. As well, 2 undocumented immigrants. So very, very sad story that we're following here on Live Now from Fox. I do want to take you out to her celebration of life event at as they had numerous people, including the mayor there on hand for this, speaking and honoring the life of Jocelyn Nungaray. Let's listen into this from earlier today.
Thank everyone who's present. Your presence means so much to the family, means so much to me. This is the second hardest thing I have to do since I was sworn in as mayor. To stand before you, represent the family, represent everyone that can hear my voice. The first hardest thing was the day Jocelyn's body was discovered. Mrs. Nungaray wanted to see her body to help identify Jocelyn. I was at the police station. PPD was already working around the clock that afternoon. And she wants me to call her Lexi. I keep telling her, Miss Nungaray. But Lexi did not understand, and obviously, our desperate attempt to see Jocelyn. I took on my duties to explain to her that he took a medical examiner and do his job, and to do everything possible for her. Obviously, everyone that can hear my voice knows how personal this tragedy is for each one of us, every Houstonian. Everyone in our region. As a father and a grandfather, it's very personal. I know what's going through your mind when you learn of it, when you read about it. The thought of losing your child, your grandchild, horrible circumstances. It gets no worse. And today, thanks you for allowing me, for asking me to speak.
All right, you're just listening in. The mayor there of Houston talking about the life of Jocelyn Nungaray, the 12-year-old tragically killed just last week, as well as her body was found last Monday, I believe. Very, very sad story there out of the Houston area. So many people on hand for this, the celebration of life event. We've heard from her mother a time or two, just the emotion in her voice after losing her 12-year-old daughter. All right, I'm Andy Mack here on Live Now from Fox. Thank you so much for joining us. I want to give you a couple Live Now looks, including out of Atlanta, Georgia, the site there of this presidential debate later on tonight. Also there at the White House, just about 4:30 on the East Coast. We're getting this live picture in right now as we're following a very, very close situation potentially at Newark Liberty International Airport on Thursday as a small plane went off the runway after landing, causing delays for travelers flying into and out of New Jersey. So you can see crews on hand for this, just a live picture there as we are following it there in the Northeast, a main hub for both New York and New Jersey. All right, let's continue on here on Live Now from Fox as we follow all the top headlines. Let's take you out to a live event right now as Secretary of State Antony Blinken making some remarks in Washington, D.C.
Thank you. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. This is genuinely a special moment, one I was looking forward to, and one I so deeply appreciate because, first of all, it sure beats working on the Middle East. Second, I see so many extraordinary people here, the families, colleagues from the past, as well as the present. But it's also an incredible opportunity to reflect on this institution, the people who've led it in such extraordinary ways, and two in particular, in Madeleine Albright and Colin Powell. Now, you will understand that in this moment, I empathize deeply, deeply with Alan and Rossi. And for those of you who don't remember Alan and Rossi, that's just the point. They were the act that followed the Beatles on the Ed Sullivan Show. So every day I go to work knowing that I was following Madeleine Albright and Colin Powell. Not an easy task, not to mention a few others like Jim Baker and George Schultz. But today, let me say this. We have the immense, and I have the immense honor of being able to dedicate two of our most important spaces to two of our most extraordinary and most beloved leaders. We're taking these steps not only to recognize Secretary Powell and Secretary Albright's extraordinary service to the institution, not only to recognize their service to the American people, we're doing it so that everyone who gathers here, who comes to these rooms, will be reminded of the way that they led. And ask a question that I have to ask myself often in this job. What would Madeleine do? What would Colin do faced with the challenges of this moment? I've learned a lot of lessons from both of them, both from knowing them, knowing Madeleine better, because to me, she was an extraordinary mentor, a friend, a supporter. I got to watch her in action during the Clinton administration when I first came to government. And she was someone who played an instrumental role in my life and bringing me to this point from that moment on, including so many gatherings in that living room in Georgetown over the years. She played an extraordinary role in keeping a community of people together, and that made a profound difference. Secretary Powell I got to know a little bit later, but the generosity that he showed me was truly extraordinary. When I had the privilege of serving here following the great Bill Burns as Deputy Secretary, one of the first things that I did coming to the building was to go visit with your dad and just to ask him, what should I focus on? And I thought he'd say, well, North Korea or Iran, the people. That was exactly what you said, exactly what he told me. Come here and remember, this institution is first and foremost its people. And we try to live up to that as best we can every day. Because we're joined by the families and so many close friends of both secretaries, let me just take the liberty of, first of all, referring to our honorees as simply as Madeleine and Colin. But let me also try to impart a few thoughts, maybe a few lessons that at least I take from them. And one of those lessons is, and I think all of you here will appreciate it, get the right people around the table. The conference room next door, now the Albright room, is where some of the most consequential debates about U.S. foreign policy are going to be hashed out and have been hashed out. And it's a table, some of you, many of you know it well, but for those of you who don't, take a look after we finish here. Maybe we get a dozen or so people around that table. When Colin and Madeleine held weighty discussions around the table, they didn't pick people who sat there based on hierarchy. They didn't pick them based on title. Instead, they actually sought out the people who knew something about something. People who had actually worked the issues up close and could really bring that value and perspective to the table. And they both made a point of seeking out a diversity of views.
All right, you're just listening in this Secretary of State room dedication there at the State Department talking about some of his predecessors here on Live Now from Fox. I'm Andy Mack, another live picture right now in Atlanta, Georgia, a live picture as the First Lady appears, Jill Biden touching down there in Atlanta as Air Force One as well. We continue on. Air Force One was a little bit earlier. Joe Biden already in attendance in Georgia for this. You can see the mayor of Atlanta, Andre Dickens, on hand for this. He was also there for the arrival of President Biden there in Georgia ahead of this debate coming up at 9 o'clock Eastern here on Live Now from Fox. So you can see Joe Biden there. We saw her in recent days at the Pride Month celebration in Washington, D.C., so they weren't necessarily together as the preparation for Biden was held at Camp David. She was at the White House. So this is just a live picture right there as Joe Biden on the ground for this debate coming up later on tonight. We're expecting the former President Donald Trump to arrive down on the tarmac in about 40 or so minutes as well, 45 minutes there, as we did hear a report from our Fox 5 team talking about a 5:30 Eastern time arrival for him, and plenty of supporters on the ground for that. We're going to follow it all here on Live Now from Fox. We'll slide away for a quick 2-minute break. All right, welcome back in here to Live Now from Fox. It appears both Bidens are on the ground right now in Atlanta, Georgia. There, Joe Biden touching down just a little bit ago, waving to some of the media as well, as we're following it here on Live Now from Fox. As of course, the debate coming up at 9 o'clock Eastern, and we'll have full coverage throughout the evening hours here on Live Now from Fox. All right, I'm Andy Mack. Thank you so much for joining us. We're here different reports as well as different lawmakers make remarks ahead of this debate. Let's take you right now out to Hakeem Jeffries in Capitol Hill, on Capitol Hill, talking about this at his weekly press conference. Let's listen in.
Hard to lower housing costs, end price gouging, and grow the middle class. The only thing that extreme MAGA Republicans care about are big, massive tax cuts for the wealthy, the well-off, and the well-connected. There's a big difference between President Biden and House Democrats on the one hand and the extreme MAGA Republican agenda on the other. That's the contrast that is before the American people. And each and every day, here in the House of Representatives, we see the Republican majority continue to try to jam their extreme right-wing ideology down the throats of the American people and do the bidding of big donors and big business. House Democrats will continue to fight to solve problems and deliver real results for everyday Americans. Questions?
Mr. Leader, your party just got through a divisive primary in New York where How would you describe the tension between the moderate members of your party and the progressive members of your party? And is it your responsibility as a leader to support your incumbents that are in these vulnerable primaries?
Yes, and that's what I've consistently done.
In the Bowman primary, we saw a PAC, super PAC spend upwards of $14 million. Do you think that type of spending is appropriate? And many Democrats on the left of your caucus have forcefully called it out. Do you join with them in condemning that type of outside spending?
I think that pro-Israel groups are going to support pro-Israel members of Congress. Pro-reproductive freedom groups are going to support pro-reproductive freedom members of Congress. Pro-climate groups are going to support pro-climate members of Congress or candidates who are out in the communities throughout the country. Our view on democracy reform broadly is that we have to do everything possible to protect and strengthen a government of the people, by the people, and for the people, which is why the House Democratic position, shared broadly by progressives, New Dems, and Blue Dogs, is that we have to get the Freedom to Vote Act, which is our signature piece of democracy reform legislation, over the finish line. In this Congress, the Freedom to Vote Act is H.R. 11. If we get the gavels back, the Freedom to Vote Act will be H.R. 1. That's our view, shared broadly by the entirety of the House Democratic Caucus, as to how to make sure we have the most accessible, authentic, and available electoral system possible. Second row. Okay.
What message?
That was very generous of you to yield.
What message do you think it sends that Jamal Bowman lost his primary?
From the very beginning of my journey in Congress, there hasn't been an electoral cycle where a sitting member of the House Democratic Caucus hasn't lost. It only happens in a handful of occasions each and every Congress. It's only happened once in this cycle. So in my view, it's hard to draw any general conclusion when the overwhelming majority of incumbent members of the House Democratic Caucus, from the moment that I first showed up in Washington, D.C., have been reelected. Each district is unique. Each campaign is unique. And as we do every cycle, at the end of the cycle, we try to figure out what lessons can be learned from the decisions that have been made by the voters that we're privileged to represent. Second row. We have supported, as House Democratic leaders, every single incumbent member of the House Democratic Caucus, and there's no expectation, as far as I can tell, that that will change. We have a process to discuss the manner in which any endorsements are rolled out and presented to the communities that our members are privileged to represent. That process is ongoing right now for Representative Bush and several other members who will face the voters in August.
Thank you, Mr. Leader. Have you been briefed on the canceled energy and commerce markup on the privacy bill? And do you support that piece of legislation?
I have not been briefed, but there are real concerns that exist in terms of some of the pro-civil liberties and pro-civil rights provisions in that legislation that were taken out by the extreme MAGA Republicans. And I was very skeptical of the legislation that was going to be before the Energy and Commerce Committee, though had not taken a position. The legislation and the markup ran into problems on the Republican side, as far as I can tell, because big business interests made clear to House Republican leadership that they did not support the efforts that were underway in good faith to protect the privacy of the American consumer. That's the reason that the privacy legislation and the markup were taken down. We are willing to enter into good faith conversations led by Frank Pallone to try to arrive at comprehensive, robust privacy protections for the American people. But those legislative efforts should also involve protecting the civil rights of the American people and confronting issues related to algorithmic bias that impact communities of color. Thank you.
Are you watching the debate tonight, and if so, how?
I look forward to watching the debate. There are several gatherings that members of the House Democratic Caucus will be holding, including one being held by the Congressional Black Caucus that I plan to stop by this evening.
Thanks, Mr. Leader. What do you make of sort of the political fighting going on the floor right now when it comes to the amendments on these spending bills, ranging from defunding Ukraine, cutting Mayorkas' salary? There was even one that didn't make it to the floor to oppose IVF.
The extreme MAGA Republican majority is not serious about governing. They are serious about jamming their reckless far-right ideology down the throats of the American people. We've seen it from the very beginning of this Congress, and it has not let up, and it never will, because the House Republican Conference is completely and totally out of control. They needed Democrats to step in to save them from themselves and plunging this Congress into further dysfunction. And every single major piece of legislation that has moved forward in this Congress has done so because of majority support from House Democrats. That's the way it's been. That's the way it's going to be until the end of the 118th Congress. Kevin?
If I can circle back to Bowman, is there anything that you feel, I know you endorsed him, you did the robocall, is there anything else you feel you could have done or should have done in that race? And then separately, the Supreme Court is still not weighted on the immunity case. I'm just curious what you make of the fact that we're still waiting for some sort of indication there.
Yeah, my capacity as House Democratic leader, I have the responsibility of traveling all throughout the country. It takes me away from the 8th Congressional District of Brooklyn that I'm privileged to represent more than had ever been the case in my previous 10 years in Congress. And I'm thankful that the people in the 8th Congressional District that I represent have given me the grace and space because of the fragility of the moment and the need to protect our country, defend our democracy, and fight for freedom, which means taking back the gavels in November. It's the expectation of members of the House Democratic Caucus, which includes progressive New Dems and Blue Dogs, that it's all hands on deck for House Democratic leaders in terms of making sure we are there to take back control on November 5th, because the stakes are incredibly high. At the same time, we're going to continue to do all that we can, given the limitations and constraints that we have, as part of an existential moment to take back the House to be supportive of our colleagues, as has been the case in New York, in New Jersey, in Texas, and in many other states where there have been members who have had primaries, and in those states over the next 2 months where members will have primaries.
To his second point about the Supreme Court, we still haven't heard about the immunity case, and they also announced that they're adding a day, Monday in July, for the first time in a few years. What's your reaction to that?
And what is so complicated about making it clear to the American people that in this great country, no one is above the law? We all know that the extreme far-right MAGA majority on the United States Supreme Court is totally out of control. They detonated Roe v. Wade and reproductive freedom for millions of women across this country. Ended affirmative action and the ability for colleges and universities to make sure that their campuses look like America from being brought to life, and are probably preparing to undermine Congress's ability to enact consumer protection laws designed to benefit the health, safety, and well-being of the American people. But with respect to the immunity issue, this should be crystal clear. America is not an autocracy, and it's not a monarchy. We don't have kings in America. We have a democracy. And in a democracy, no one is above the law. What is so complicated about this decision at this moment? We know that Justice Thomas and Justice Alito are out of control and driven by a far-right ideology that is way outside of the American mainstream. But it's not clear why some of the other justices haven't swiftly come to the conclusion that Donald Trump, as a former president, is subject to the same set of laws, expectations, and norms as the American people.
All right, you're just listening in there to Hakeem Jeffries here on this as we are just hours away from this first presidential debate. You can see a live picture there right now on the campus there of Georgia Tech as this will get going at 9 o'clock Eastern. All right, as we approach the top of the hour here on Live Now from Fox, I'm Andy Mack. I want to get into more of potentially where we stand heading into this debate because it will soon potentially change in just a few hours. I do want to put up another live picture right here. Of course, the CNN presidential debate will be simulcast right here on Live Now from Fox, as well as it's just about 5 o'clock on the East Coast. I do want to continue on with this conversation about potentially what's to come tonight, but also what's to come in November. We're going to be joined right now by Alan Lichtman, the American University history professor. Thank you so much for joining us here on Live Now from Fox. And of course, you have correctly predicted who wins the presidency 9 out of the last 10 years. And some might argue you have done 10 out of 10 with the Bush-Gore presidential election as well. Thank you again for joining us here on Live Now from Fox. And can you give me some understanding? Where do we stand right now heading into this first presidential debate?
Well, here's what I'm going to tell your listeners and viewers. Forget the polls. They're snapshots. They're not predictors. They're abused as predictors. Forget the pundits. They talk off, it's sports talk radio. They have no scientific...
All right, good afternoon to you. I'm Fox 26 meteorologist Ramisha Shade, and once again, we are tracking the tropics. I'm walking you through it, letting you know what you can expect, not just for the next few days, but for the next week or so. Right now, we have nothing that is threatening us in the next 24 hours, but we do have multiple systems out there that in the future could possibly bring us some impact. So a lot to talk about. Of course, we are closely monitoring things out there, and we will keep you updated with the latest as far as what those models are showing. Of course, so far for this hurricane season so far, we've had one named storm that did intensify to a tropical storm, and that was Alberto. Of course, next on the list, we've got Beryl, then Chris, then Debbie, Ernesto, Francine, and all the way down to Gordon. Last name on this list, William. We are all hoping we don't get through this entire list. That would mean a super busy season, but of course the projections are for a busy season. So we'll have to wait and see and watch what happens. Of course, we're a few days away from the month of July. We're almost 1 month in to our 2024 Atlantic hurricane season. And here are some of the areas that we look for possibly higher formation of these tropical systems, and that would be parts of the Gulf of Mexico over into the western Atlantic. You can see the east coast of the U.S., especially that Carolina coast. There's a higher chance for these tropical systems developing, and of course down around the Caribbean Sea. Of course, we can get a tropical system developed outside of these areas, but usually during the month of July, we usually have a higher shot to see development in these spots. So of course, we're really watching the Gulf of Mexico, the Western Atlantic, and the Caribbean. Speaking of the Gulf of Mexico and the Caribbean, those water temps are super toasty out there into the 80s for much of this area. Low to middle 80s showing up for those sea surface temps in the Gulf. So steamy water, kind of like bath water. And of course, this acts as fuel for those potential tropical systems to develop. Northwest Caribbean also looking pretty steamy with those water temps into the 80s as well. So we've got the fuel if these systems try to get going, but here's one good thing. Of course, this time of the year, we normally have a decent amount of that Saharan dust coming off of that African coast and tracking west. So notice our Saharan dust tracker showing that we do have a decent amount of that dust across much of the Atlantic, moderate to dense Saharan dust. And notice as we go into the future, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, that Saharan dust actually starts to push more into the Caribbean and the Gulf, and even right over us here in Southeast Texas for the Houston area. So don't be surprised to see the sky starting to get a bit hazy, a little smoky, hazy for the next few days and into early next week. We are going to have that dust plume likely moving in, but that dust also acts to limit tropical development. So we're not going to totally erase any potential for a tropical depression or a tropical storm, but it just makes it a little bit harder for these systems to form in that type of environment. However, it's not impossible, and we do still have the potential for two systems to turn into tropical depressions or tropical storms in the next 2 to 7 days. So let's talk about it. This is our satellite, our tropical satellite, and you can see a lot of action right here. Not that organized right now, but this is a tropical disturbance now pushing into the northwestern Caribbean, and this is Invest 94L. What does Invest mean? It basically means it's an area that the National Hurricane Center is investigating for possible tropical cyclone development. Usually when they name it an Invest, they start to fly the hurricane hunters in to see if there is that closed center of circulation that is getting more organized and that could possibly become a tropical storm or tropical depression. So right now it's just a disturbance or a tropical wave. It is getting close to the Yucatan Peninsula, and here's the good news with this system. There's only a low chance it's going to develop into a tropical depression or tropical storm. 10% low shot next 2 days, and only a